the likelihood of utilisation of the designation?
And that's really an AT question.
Don, on that first question?
Mr. Chairman, you're quite right, or Mr. Mayor, you're quite right. The designation has been in place for a very long time. It is really a question for Kiwi Rail to answer. They are the ones who have lodged and rolled over the designation. We would have an interest in it as the passenger transport operator for Auckland, should this be included. But the line has been preserved. We do also have an interest in terms of parts of it for the consideration of the mass rapid transit solutions for Auckland. At this stage, those, as you know, are undetermined, but that's just a sort of precautionary approach that or interest that we are taking.
Okay. Is it possible, through you, Mr. Chair, to come back with some response from Kiwi Rail Holdings as to whether they do have any plans? Otherwise, we wonder why we're spending the time on it now, because most of us won't be around in another 73 years when it might come to pass.
One of the things we'll do when we sit down and discuss with them is raise that question.
Be helpful if you could come back to the committee with an answer on that. Thank you.
And just a quick reply here from the Chair. Mediation members is the Environment Court expects mediation to occur before people finalising their affidavits for the court proper, and I'm sure that our entity and the government entity will be engaging through mediation. So I have Councillor Clow.
I just want to make a comment. No questions.
Councillor Casey, question?
Yeah, it was just that if you do go to the Environment Court, would you not harness the advocacy of the affected local boards like Albert Eden, Mongakiki, Tamaki and the Foe to assist you in putting up a really strong case for grade separation of level crossings?
Don, I think you need to explain again the constraints of the unitary plan, the process.
Well, Mr. Chair, before and Councillor Casey, before the if things did go before the Environment Court, and I think we need to stress we're really hopeful that a matter such as this we could resolve without going to court. But before the court, it would be primarily experts in traffic safety and engineering matters that would be contesting the two different views of Kiwi Rail and the council. Local views on congestion and safety. We could explore further whether that would assist the council's case, but I don't believe that we'd specifically need local board representation, and there are certainly some challenges in actually boards appearing before the Environment Court.
I think that's the basis of my question, is what role local boards play, given it's their patch that these unsafe crossings are going into. Do they not have a right to assist you with your advocacy?
So I'll respond to that, Councillor Casey. As you will remember, during the unitary plan process, local boards were able to give their views to be attached to the council's submission. And so if there was a view that a local board needed to take, that could be attached to the council's evidence at the hearing. If it ends up being a hearing at the Environment Court, they just would not be able to appear separately, because in this process they're considered to be part of the council case rather than having a separate case. So I think, as John has said, hopefully this issue can be dealt with before it gets to Environment Court hearing. If it can't be, then there will need to be a strategy of what is the best case to put forward, and certainly both Don and John have heard that you believe the local boards would be able to provide some helpful views on that.
Thank you, Ms. Pruitt. I have no further questions. I'll go to the debate. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Appeals against the unitary plan or unitary plan related matters tend not to be that popular around here, but I'll note that irony and move on. I think normally, I think we have to bear in mind that Kiwi Rail is our national rail utility, and its responsibility is not just for Auckland, the Auckland region, but for the whole country. I think we need to respect that. In terms of the designation on the Avondale South Down, it seems to me that there have been 4 long-standing conditions that have been rolled over and rolled over, and now we wish to replace them with 9 new conditions, some of which KiwiRail finds too onerous. Okay, I suspect a lot of this is to do with where costs fall in regard to the grade separation that will be needed. And I think we have to be fair about this. Grade separation is as much a road problem as a rail problem. And we have to weigh that when we discuss who should pay for what. And I note the irony in terms of this appeal, because I've been contacted in the last few days from people from Titirangi, and of the 260 road designations rolled over in the unitary plan, the independent panel recommended that 2 be rejected or not rolled over, be lifted, I should say. The council supported that, and Auckland Transport itself has rejected what the council and the unitary plan the council and the unitary plan panel recommended. But to take up the mayor's point, there is much more at stake than a squabble over RMA matters or unitary plan matters. This is an intensely strategic corridor. It appears to me that KiwiRail are now looking at it in terms of actually utilising it in regard to the North Auckland economy, in regard to trying to solve the freight problem we have in Auckland. Now, I think I support the Mayor, there needs to be discussion, but with all due respect, it should not necessarily be confined to planners. This is a strategic matter. I believe that the Mayor and the Chief Executive should meet with the Chairman and Chief Executive of KiwiRail, because I believe there is a lot more at stake in regard to this question than just the conditions around the Avondale South Down corridor. It also relates to the huge impact of container trucks on our arterials and motorways, and I believe there is a solution there, and I believe the council and KiwiRail working together can solve that. So I'm not in favour of going to court. I am in favour of what the Mayor is suggesting, discussions between the 2 organisations, or 3, but they should be high level, because this is a high stakes question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Hills?
Through you, Mr. Chair. If this, like the officer has said, is the only way to get around the table, then I do support the decision, because I think we've carved up our communities enough already with roads. I think this would be another poor planning decision to allow level crossings of this nature through communities. The Victorian government has just put $2.4 billion into removal of level crossings across the state because of unsafe level crossings. We do have a number of incidents on our current level crossings that pop up year on year, people getting hit of all ages, killed, and I think also the stopping traffic, whether it's walking, cycling or buses or future light rail, I think would be, not a good decision for such a large swathe of community. So I think if this is the only legal way to move forward in preventing this, I don't want to be seeing in 20, 30, 40 years that we're spending billions of dollars removing level crossings that we could have prevented at this moment now. So if this is the way forward, I support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Do the mover and the seconder wish to say anything?
Yeah, I do.
Councillor Clow.
Yep, I was on the speaking order. I'm totally joined at the hip with Councillor Lee on this one. This is a big picture thing, and this is actually part of a Northern Port strategy. Let us be quite clear on this. One of the things the Mayor alluded to in speaking earlier, but the bottom line is it may be we actually end up not with much of a port in the harbour at all, or relocated, and our big port investment may be a continuation of growth of the inland port, which is actually down at Southdown. So let us be quite clear, if the government made the decision to actually spend money, invest in Kiwi Rail to widen the railway line and widen the tunnels all the way up to Northport, and Northport takes a huge expansion, this is what this is about. This is not about putting a line from Avondale to Southdown for passengers, but of course if there was a line put in there, it would be utilised for passenger transport. But this is a line, and it's a big part of our Northern Port strategy, and I just want to make sure that council officers are being aware of the big picture here, and it is quite clear that Kiwi Rail are fighting this a little bit because of cost, because getting rid of level crossings and all that is a hugely expensive exercise, about 40 or 50 million each time you do it, and if there's 7 arterial roads there, you only need to add up all the number of the sheer cost. So this is a big part, and this is a strategic decision. I believe in time this will go ahead, and we need to make sure that we are ready. It may not be for 20 or 30 years, but it certainly is a crucial part of any Northern Port strategy if we're to extricate ourselves from our situation on the harbour. So just those comments.
Thank you, Councillor Clow. So that closes the debate, and I just want to, okay, Councillor Fletcher.
Mr. Chairman, just before you close the debate, I want to be quite clear on this point. I'm told, from what I've heard, that the only way of resolving this is the proposed way forward, that it is the only legal remedy for trying to have this resolved. I really want that to be clarified, because I feel very uncomfortable with the proposal, and if I'm to support it, I want to be very clear that the legal advice that we've received today is the correct advice.
John, coming back to you.
Okay.
Penny, do you?
There is one alternative remedy, and that would be for, and I did allude to it in response to the Mayor's question, and that would be for Kiwi Rail to lodge an alteration to its own designation after discussions to then change the conditions. That would then go through a submissions process. So there is another alternative under the RMA. This is a potentially a much faster, swifter process than taking the conditions through another submissions and hearings round. That's the only further advice I can give in response.
And I think that the onus then is on Kiwi Rail to agree to do that. If the appeal is not lodged and Kiwi Rail does not choose to take a different path, then the conditions as they have agreed on will hold. And as John says, any future work would be subject to meeting those conditions. So by lodging an appeal, which is a common practice to enable good conversations to happen, we are protecting Auckland Council's position on this. If through those discussions Kiwi Rail are amenable to actually altering their designation through a process, and they advertise and go ahead with that process, then the council can withdraw its appeal. But not lodging an appeal leaves all of the issues that Auckland Transport have raised around public safety and grade separation really out in the cold, and the conditions that Kiwi Rail have confirmed would hold fast. So our advice is that you do support the lodging of the appeal. You have noted a change that has been recommended in the resolutions, which is about John working with the chair and deputy chair of this committee on any agreements that might come out of that discussions. Both Councillor Darby and Councillor Lee will be providing that strategic overview that you have indicated, a number of you feel is really important. So I think that's covered in joining the political with the technical advisors. And as we've said, it's really to protect the council's position. If we can resolve this through discussions, that certainly is the aim of the officers involved.